know More Than a Feeling, but you almost certainly don't know who really played it, because the drummer who built the foundation was erased before the record deal was signed. The drummer who replaced him was handed someone else's arrangements and told to learn them note for note, and the man actually calling the shots was still punching a clock at Polaroid while it was all being assembled in secret. This is the rise and fall of Boston's hidden drummers. Watertown, Massachusetts, 1973. MIT-trained engineer Tom Schultz had spent his house down payment fund wiring a 12-track studio in his basement, and drummer Jim Masdea was the first man in the room, laying the rhythmic foundation that everything else would be built upon, with Tom overdubbing guitars, bass, and organ in layer after layer until the space sounded impossibly wide and clean, producing a demo that included More Than a Feeling and Peace of Mind, the Boston sound, from its very first breath, built entirely on Jim Masdea's drum arrangements with no one else in the room. When Epic Records came calling, Jim was removed before the deal was finalized. Management claimed he wanted to play a flashy live drum solo that didn't fit the arrangements, while Brad Delp told journalists Jim had lost interest, but court documents filed years later described a drummer who left unwillingly, and the behavior of a man who spent years in legal proceedings to prove what he had built is not the behavior of someone who simply stopped caring. The drummer brought in to replace him was Sib Hashian, a local player handed Jim's arrangements and told to learn them note for note exactly as Jim had played them, becoming a human playback machine for another drummer's work, while Tom recorded the debut album alone in his Watertown basement, having sent the band to Los Angeles as a decoy to convince Epic the sessions were happening there, building the biggest debut in rock history in secret, while the man whose face would sell it waited 3,000 miles away. Boston went gold in 7 weeks and eventually sold 17 million copies, with Sib's name in the credits, Jim's arrangements underneath every track, and one song actually played by Jim himself at Tom's insistence, giving the man they replaced a single credit on the record he had built from nothing.
Man, this story really gets under my skin. 2 drummers basically built the entire Boston sound, note for note, and both ended up fighting in court just to get credit for what they created. Jim laid the foundation in a basement, Sib had to copy it perfectly, and the industry still gave the spotlight to Tom Schultz while they argued over scraps. It's a brutal reminder of how the people who make the groove happen are often the last ones to get paid or remembered. What do you think? Does Boston sound different when you know the real story behind the drums? Drop your take in the comments.
Then Don't Look Back arrived under label pressure, with Tom reportedly splicing Sib's drum takes into dozens of fragments until they matched something only he could hear. And when Tom's perfectionism stalled the third album and CBS filed a $60 million lawsuit, Sib was fired and Jim was brought back as if none of it had ever happened, before both men ended up in lawyers' offices fighting for royalties they should never have had to fight for, with Jim testifying under oath that Sib had simply learned his arrangements the way a cover band learns a song, and Sib dying of a heart attack in 2017 while performing on a rock cruise ship at 67 years old, still playing drums in front of people who loved the music, decades after the band he helped make famous had changed the locks on him. 2 drummers built one of rock's greatest sounds, and both ended up in a courtroom trying to claim what was theirs. Subscribe to Voice of Legends, because the foundation is always laid by someone history forgets to name.